Hello, bonjour, Aanii from Sault Ste. Marie to Sioux Lookout, from Manitoulin to Moose Factory. Welcome back to Connecting the North with Fringe North. My name is Garrett Ryan, and I am the host of this program. Today, we are joined by the wonderful writer and educator, Kim Fahner. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I guess just start off by giving the viewers a little bit of context of the work you do and where you do it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words?
Um, well, I get it's such a strange thing. My day job is I'm an English teacher at a high school here in Sudbury at Marymount Academy, and I've written my whole life, but in particular, the last 25 or 27 years, I've been writing fairly consistently, and I've just published my fifth book of poetry.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
That's fantastic.
So I also write plays. I'm working on a new play. My first novel's being published by Latitude 46, and working on my second novel. I really don't stop.
Yeah,
And I guess I don't really think about it. I just keep writing.
that's great. I feel
Mhm.
the same way. I'm also primarily a writer, and I have so many things going on. Just you just got to keep going. That's I know the urge for sure.
Like breathing.
It is exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So aside from writing, is there any other work you do in the arts?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm the Ontario representative for the Writers Union of Canada, and I've been that since 2020,
It's fantastic.
and I'll be that until spring of 2024. So I'm really focused on creating community among Ontario as a region for authors in the union.
Mhm.
Um, I'm really keen on getting Canadian authors into our schools as an English teacher, and also seeing their work in our classrooms so that our students can see themselves reflected. And that includes, BIPOC writers, that women, so
Yeah,
a variety of voices that haven't traditionally been heard in the English curriculum for secondary, which is where I teach, but throughout from elementary up. That's one of my passions, really, as an educator and writer, but also accessibility issues too in publishing and for writers across Canada.
that's fantastic. I look forward to delving into that a little bit more because that's really reflective of some of the work that we're doing here at Fringe North as well. It's those working within those communities is really important to us. Um,
Good.
I like to ask about what other areas people are involved in because very often in Northern Ontario, we're sort of forced to have involvement in all these separate places if we want to get work done and push things through. So that's great to hear your involvement there. Um, so you're from Sudbury. Is this basically where you've worked most of your life? Have you done anything in any other communities? I'm just curious where you found yourself as a writer.
I'm still finding myself as a writer.
Oh, good.
I'm like a 10-year-old, 52-year-old. So I'm like an anachronism, and I think I've taken a long time. I keep evolving, and that's exciting for me as a writer and as a person. I've lived here my whole life, except I went away for my master's at Carleton in my 20s, um, in Ottawa. And then I did my Bachelor of Education in North Bay at Nipissing.
Very
I
nice.
have really fond memories of that university as well. I did my undergrad at Laurentian, um, and had some really amazing English profs and history profs here. And then I've also lived in Kingsville. So for about a year in 2018, I took a leave from teaching to work on my novel in Kingsville, and then a possible sequel to that novel,
Oh wow,
which is partially set around Kingsville and Windsor.
that's great.
So I also was laureate here, poet laureate from 2016 to 2018. So after that period, I worked fairly hard in the community. And I just thought I need a year to sort of regroup, move away, find my voice in a different place as a writer. And that was really energizing for me.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I have also lived in North Bay, Sudbury, and Ottawa, so I've got three of those places. I'm wondering for you, how, what was the how did the environments differ in your kind of creative process? Like how did you find the different artistic um, like organizationally as well as just the kind of creative side of it? Like how did you find the arts communities, and then how did you find yourself influenced as a writer?
Found it hard here growing up in the arts community. You know, you had to fight in the 90s for the arts, and I think we have to fight more for it now again with university losses here at Laurentian and the cuts to the humanities and the arts, which are, in my mind, completely atrocious. What's happened there? Real concerns about that. So for me, going away in my 20s to Ottawa and then in my early 30s to North Bay,
Mhm.
I met amazing people who were poets and writers and artists and singers, songwriters. And really, I began to get a sense of how community works in larger places, not massive places like Toronto, but Ottawa, which felt to me like large and exciting, but not massive.
Yeah,
Um, and then again in North Bay, which I am really fond of North Bay. I'm really fond of the Conspiracy of Three reading series, the folks that have put that on. It's one of Canada's longest running reading series. And so the sense of arts communities in those two places really excited me. And when I came back to Sudbury, I think that was something that I brought with me. And I became much more aware of connecting through various disciplines within the arts and trying to hang out with writers and actors and all of that. And going to Kingsville and Windsor in 2018, my goodness, Windsor's one of the most vibrant arts
yeah,
communities in this country. And I'm always shocked when people say, well, you went to Windsor. Why would you pick Windsor and Kingsville for a year? I I have made the most amazing collegial friends and dear friends in the arts there. And it's so much like Sudbury in terms of its culture, but really exciting in that it's bridging to Detroit. So there's this wonderful,
yeah.
rich vibrancy about it. So I think just from being able to be in those three places through my life outside of this place where I've spent most of my time, I'm aware of how other places create art communities, artistic communities,
Yeah.
right? And I worry in Sudbury, I don't know how it is in North Bay or the Sioux or Timmins. I worry about silos, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel it's almost I want more weaving together of disciplines. I think it's and this is happening in Sudbury definitely, but I can see where it could not as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to speak from North Bay is where I was born and raised, so I definitely know the North Bay community very well. I think we do a very good job in North Bay of um, bridging those communities and working together. There's a really tight knit community of different disciplines in North Bay, which I think is
Right.
very unique. I haven't found that as strongly in different communities, but like you said, I think it is starting to happen more in places like Sudbury and the Sioux, which is great to see. And then something I'm also very interested in, which is one of the goals of some of the work that we're doing here as well, is also going once the cities are a little bit more cohesive, moving apart from city to city, having North Bay and Sudbury working together, or Sudbury and the Sioux, because I'm finding that there's still such a divisiveness, even though we're in such similar situations.
I think you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think that's all true. And I can see examples of where parts of the arts in Sudbury have woven together over the years.
Yeah,
I still, the deficit with the university falling apart is really difficult and how that's going to affect the arts here in this city. long term, but also across the Northeast for kids who are creative. Where they go to school now worries me a bit, as a high school teacher too.
Absolutely.
But I
Yeah,
worry about
I,
that. Just oh, sorry.
sorry, no, keep talking, keep talking. I keep going.
I was just thinking when you were talking about even our cities are a bit like silos because we really are in the Northeast. And even when I think of my work as the TWUC rep for Ontario, I really would like more Northern writers to become part of TWUC in Ontario because I think there's the Northwest with Thunder Bay as a center, and then there's Timmins, North Bay, the Sioux, Sudbury, and all the points in between. And I keep thinking, my goodness, there's got to be a way to bring us more closely woven into one another, like matchmaking. I love when I can introduce an artist to a writer or make connections between writers. And it's just really wonderful to connect people from other parts of the province, right? And if we could do that with our towns in the Northeast, I think it'd be really vibrant and rich. I know it's there. It's just a matter of weaving it, right? And so what you're doing through the Fringe up in the Sioux and this podcast to me is really exciting work.
Thank you.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's something I'm very passionate about, and I didn't mean to cut you off. I got excited because you were talking about something that I'm also very passionate about, which is creating a vibrant educational structure in the North. Like one of the biggest issues is people, some of our most exciting emerging artists have to leave to go to university to get educated, and then oftentimes they don't come back. And I think that the Laurentian cuts were obviously an even bigger blow to that. Like we're going backwards, not forwards. So I think the majority of the people that are going to be listening to this are going to have a good idea about the Laurentian situation. But for those who don't know, maybe you could just speak to that a little bit. Maybe speak to your personal reactions to those cuts, especially as an alumni as well.
So I have a really close affiliation with Laurentian. My two uncles were really highly involved in athletics. So Peter Ennis was my uncle, and he was the coach of Team Canada, the women's basketball team at the Olympics in 1996 in Atlanta. And he was, he won Canadian championships. We were so proud of him. And he built Laurentian's basketball program for women. He also coined the phrase pride and tradition. So to me, this has just been traumatic, really, when everything happened in 2021. And my other uncle was Yeno Tahani. And so that he was the coach of Sasha Bauman, Alex Bauman. And so I know how much time those two men gave to that place to build it. And now that the pool's not open, that's also a real upset to me and to our family, just because we all know how much time they gave. So when the cuts came to Laurentian and everything happened in that spring of 2021, just to see the cuts to the arts and humanities was further injury, I think. And it's bothersome to me that they want to rebrand it as a mining university when so many of our parents and grandparents were miners, and our parents and grandparents were so proud of us for going to university and diversifying. That's part of how people attracted, other careers to the North, was to say that there was a rich arts community. And now I'm concerned that you've taken away theater and music and religious studies. English is not just English anymore. The arts are just not woven into the curriculum. And I have students who are, kind of caught up in that mess of what can they take, and they're having to take, they'll let me know they've had to go to different universities online to get courses to complete their degree. And I just think we're not thinking of our young people and how the cuts at the university here will affect them in terms of having to go away, and the kids who are marginalized or who can't afford to go away. And we're talking about emerging artists, young artists. So then what happens to those bright lights, you know? I think it's a real concern. Out migration from the north is not a new thing. When I was in my 20s in the 90s, well, I knew lots of people who went away and didn't come back. So a lot of us made choices to come back and be artists here. And I have a number of friends across different disciplines in the arts who are here, but it's darn hard to, you know, how do you convince a young person to stay when they can't even find an artistic course at their university?
Yeah.
Right? If it's just all mining, also, how well-rounded can sciences be without the arts?
Hmm.
It's a real concern for me because I'm also involved in science, poetry, and all of that too. So,
Very interesting. Um, I'm curious from your perspective as well. One of the things that I'm most concerned about, and that I have expressed, is that you, like you're saying, what are these emerging artists going to do without these programs? But I'm also curious, what has been your experience with the value of the arts on younger people, high school aged people that are not planning on making a career in the arts?
yeah.
But have you seen, like, what is the impact of the arts been in these younger people, in these developing young adults, and what do these reductions of programs mean for these kids?
I think the arts are so crucial for young people from elementary to secondary and beyond, but especially in elementary and secondary. You know, mental health is such a huge concern for teachers right now, especially after the pandemic. And we're still in the pandemic, really. Um, for me, I use poetry and creative writing in my classes to get them to express any anxieties. And I'm really fond of getting them to journal and to write poetry. I can see it when I pass by the art room at my school, the wonderful things they're making. So
Hmm.
I worry for that piece because I think being a well-rounded person is about like a diet, right? What do you take in? Food, how do you sleep? What's your exercise patterning? When do you see other people? When do you socialize? And that would also include for me, like, what do I choose to watch or listen to or read? Those things are pieces of a diet within the arts. And I think that there's just that lack of that's a concern, a huge
Hmm.
concern for me as a teacher, but also as a writer. I try to mentor young writers, and I've mentored a couple of new poets here in town. And I think it's incumbent upon more established artists across any discipline that you try to mentor younger emerging artists. And they may not be younger. An emerging artist can be somebody in their 60s, 70s, 40s, 50s, right? You don't have to be 25 or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, no, I think that's great. I think that's a really important distinction as well, that anybody can be an emerging artist. So these cuts in programming doesn't it's not just affecting kids or young adults, it's affecting everyone that has any interest in doing anything artistic. It's sending a message that that's not something that the communities are valuing, which is
Yeah.
very terrible. Yeah.
Well, we're coming from a resource heavy region.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the histories of all of our towns, if we look at all the towns in between these larger centers, how were these places built historically? That's resource extraction, right? So we've had to fight extra hard for the arts, and anyone in there, I'm in my early 50s, but I'm sure there are people who fought for the arts before me, and I have great honor and respect for those people who worked in our cities across the Northeast. And I think it's, again, part of the legacy they've left for us to actually speak up against these things. Because if we don't, we're going to lose our youth. And that's a concern. I mean,
Yeah.
what happens to this region artistically? I think the opening of Place des Arts is really exciting.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm really pleased. I had my book launch there in the fall. I'm so excited that they are really welcoming to Anglophone artists and artists, BIPOC artists, like everyone is welcome there. And it really feels welcoming to me. And I think that's a long time coming,
Yeah,
that project, you
absolutely.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was really exciting to me as well, seeing like all the doom and gloom reductions that are happening. At least we're seeing some positive new openings as well. I also had some work read there back in would have been April during Play Smelter. And such a beautiful space. It was so exciting to see that
Yeah,
project finally come to fruition. It was great.
it is wonderful.
Yeah, I'm also wondering. Um, you mentioned earlier wanting to or doing work with more marginalized communities. What have you seen to be the impact of arts on some of these communities? Has it been different? Like I have found working with marginalized communities in dramaturgical ways has really helped give them a voice that they wouldn't otherwise have. And I'm so concerned that with you know less of a focus on the arts, these amazing people are gonna feel like they need to go back into their shells and not have that outlet to express themselves. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, I do. I mean, marginalized communities, I think of kids as a teacher who come from difficult places and what the arts does for them, you know? And I'm mindful in my classroom choices of what I share as a teacher of literature.
Yeah.
I'm including, this is the way I would look at it, is what has traditionally been the center of power, patriarchal, white, um, entitled, colonial,
Mm-hmm.
all of that, and thinking about what voices have not been heard and why not, and opening spaces and that should have been there for those groups and community and now should be there. So I'm mindful of that diversity of voices and I think it's an issue in the North in particular. I think we need to be more mindful of that. I also have friends, Laura Lee and Wallace Gillard, who do wonderful murals around town in, you know, challenging demographic areas and encouraging people to take part in arts. And Myths and Mirrors does wonderful work. I'm sure you've heard of them as well. I think not just to think of BIPOC artists, but to think of different social
Absolutely.
strata as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so many voices haven't been heard. Even just some of the work that my friend Sarah Gartshore is doing
Yeah.
in women's work
Yeah.
and creating plays around voices of sex workers and
Mm-hmm.
Swan here in Sudbury. I think those are really important pieces that voices that haven't been heard for whatever reason, politically or just from fear
Mm-hmm.
of letting other voices speak. So much to think about, really. And so when we have kids wanting to leave, and I keep saying kids, but I'm young people,
For sure.
any emerging artists moving towards the South is a worry. You have
Yeah.
to wonder what is missing that makes someone want to go when you talk about outmigration in the arts.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to think about how we need to support the arts organizations in our cities through municipal government. Of course, OAC and Canada Council for the Arts are great, but how are these municipal governments supporting theaters, art galleries, libraries, places where arts can be, and schools, all of this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm I'm interested to hear your thoughts on do you think this is something I'm trying to ask people as well because I'm trying to get sort of I'm trying to conceptualize what it means to be a northern artist. It's such a hard question to answer. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on is there something that you have found defines Northern Ontario art? Being a Northern Ontarian artist, is it quantifiable? Um, I'm just I'm curious to hear your perspective on that because what I the big thing for me is trying to get um, to verbalize what is worth preserving. Do you know what I mean? It's I am such an advocate for Northern arts, and I'm trying to like pin down exactly what it is that we're fighting for, because that's so important. I think to be able to kind of grasp what it means to be uniquely Northern Ontarian in your artwork.
Oh my gosh, such a huge question you've asked, right?
Oh, it is. It is.
And you're somebody from the North, so you understand, and you work in the arts, and you're working in nonprofit arts. You understand the complicated nature of that question, and the complicated question and answer here could be, it's like a Jenga,
Mm,
a Jenga puzzle. Sure, we're one of the OAC's priority groups
yeah.
by virtue of our geography, and rightfully so. You know, I've been on a jury for the OAC, and it's really interesting to be a voice from the North. Um, Interesting for me to hear voices from larger areas, and also to be sure that I'm mindful of how clearly my voice speaks for this region, because we are at a deficit. How can we not be?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was thinking, I was reading about school libraries, and sometimes there's a distinction in funding for school libraries in the south and the north of the province. And there does seem to be a divide between Barrie northwards, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Barrie's still not part of the GTA. When I was growing up, it wasn't part of the GTA.
Yeah.
I just think we have very distinct voices. We're very interesting region because just geographically we are further away from larger centers.
Mm-hmm.
We are, our cities are further apart. Like if you think of Stratford, London, Windsor,
Mm-hmm.
right? They kind of string themselves along like beads on a necklace, whereas
Exactly.
ours, sure, we're still on a necklace of beads, but they're further apart. We have to think about transport. We have to think about cost of moving people. So if we have a literary festival, it costs us more to fly in authors or to bring them in by train or bus. We don't have train as
Mm-hmm.
often as we should.
Yeah.
Um, so for me, what does it mean to be a Northern Ontario artist? I've chosen to live here, and at times it is a love-hate relationship for me, and my friends know this. The fact that I went away for a year was a real turning point for me to think about whether or not I wanted to make the rest of my life here. And I don't know that I've decided yet. It depends on how this place works moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want a professional theater.
Yeah.
I want to be able to think that someday one of my plays will be on a stage in the North. I think it's important for Northern artists to see their work on Northern stages.
Yeah.
And to see their work published by Northern presses like Latitude,
Mm-hmm.
and to create literary festivals. There are great groups, the Northwestern Ontario Writers Workshop, right? They have a long acronym. I always screw it up. But I know from TWUC that there are some really strong and fantastic writers in the Northwest part of the province too. I'd love for us to join the Northwest, the Northeast more.
Absolutely.
And they're a distinct region unto themselves as well, very different from the Northeast, but there are similarities. I just think we need to celebrate the North,
Mm-hmm.
and recognize its beauty, its challenges, and it does form our work. You know, I'm thinking of writers' works. I'm thinking of Lisa Kovala's most recent novels. Sisu's Winter War is, oh, I've probably screwed up the name of her novel. And I read it. It's beautiful. I've just screwed it up. I'll look it up.
That's it.
And I'm thinking of novels that speak to the cultures that have, you know, formed their lives here.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, I don't know that you'd have as large a Finnish population when you think of Sudbury and then Thunder Bay, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm interested in some of your work. I know you've delved a lot into this sort of Celtic mythology. Um, what was the what first brought about working in that realm of things, what caused that artistic impulse? Um, I, I'm wondering if it was something related to your upbringing in the north, or if it's sort of an external thing. Um, just curious.
So my last name is Fahner, which is German. So my father's family was German.
Yeah.
My grandfather married a woman who was Scottish, Irish, and English.
Okay.
But my mother's side is pure Irish.
Okay.
So her maiden name was Ennis, and my grandmother's maiden name was Kelly. So I was I did not get on well with my paternal grandparents. They were not really kind people. So I was blessed enough to have this great Irish Catholic family. My
Hmm.
grandmother was one of 10, Alice Kelly. She became Alice Ennis.
Hmm.
So I had three aunts who were single who lived in a house on Kingsmount, and they were so influential. Two were teachers. So I spent a lot of time with both Nora and Maureen, and they would read us stories and sing us songs. And so that's how I got hooked on some of the legends of
Yeah.
Ireland. Um, and then stories have always excited me. So
That's uh, that's so great to hear. That's exactly what I was what I was hoping you'd say, because I have such a similar connection. My my paternal family actually is like Sudbury and Irish as well. Um,
yes.
so I imagine we have some similar backstories there, and I have found there to be a very interesting influence from all the Irish immigrants in how we tell stories in Northern Ontario.
Yes.
So I'm so happy you said that, because that's exactly when I was looking at your bibliography, I was making that connection to my own Irish family, and I thought that was really neat. That's
When
great.
I came back from Carleton, when I was in Ottawa, I was trying to find community, and I had my great uncle was there, Brian Kelly and his wife Pat, and so I found Cultus Keltori Erin, which was like traditional Irish group based out of Dublin that came across to North America. And so when I came home to Sudbury, there was a small group of the Sudbury Irish Heritage Club. I would go and do songs with them. I sang a lot. And then we started a branch of Cultus here. So through my 20s, I did a lot of singing at the Irish Celtic fairs in town around St. Patrick's Day and St. Bridget's Day, which is coming up. And then I also did Cayley dancing
Oh wow, that's great.
through my 20s and 30s. So I was really addicted to Cayley dancing.
You are better than me, because I could not do it. I've tried
Have
on
you?
several occasions. Oh yeah, but no, it's not. I'm not
Oh, it's so
coordinated enough
much
for it.
fun.
I love watching it. I love being
Yes,
in the room, but I'm not coordinated enough for it.
it's
Um,
so much fun. It's just the pandemic's put a bit of a
yeah,
bend in it, right? But back then we were dancing once a week at the armories on Riverside. So a bunch
yeah.
of us would just listen and call the dances and
Hmm.
the siege of Ennis. There are all these wonderful dances where if you misstep, you've thrown four people off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of songs did you do? I'm trying to think of some of the classic. Did you do any of the like Irish language classic songs?
I took an Irish immersion weekend at Kingston in my 20s, and I didn't do
Okay.
well because everybody was speaking Irish and it's a difficult language to learn.
Yeah.
I even tried in the pandemic to teach myself again, and I was so frustrated. I thought, oh my gosh, like I know enough that if I'm on a train from Limerick to Dublin that I can understand
Hmm.
basics, but I would never dare. Although one time I was in Milltown Malbay in 2018, and I was in a bookstore, and the fellow started talking. He said something in Irish and I answered him, and he was like, you totally
Yeah,
understood what I said. So
that's great. Irish is such a fun language. I can speak it a little bit. I did a summer in the Gaeltacht in Ireland learning it,
God,
and it was an amazing experience. And it's kind of I've lost a lot of it because it's not a language I get to speak very much.
so
Um,
jealous.
it was
I'm so
amazing.
jealous of your experience right there.
It was wonderful. I anyone considering anyone that has any Irish heritage and is considering it, definitely I recommend it. Um,
Um,
it's
yeah,
it's so lovely.
I don't sing Sean knows. Like I sing, I guess well, I will sing a cappella, and then I have a friend, Pat McGuire in town, who sang with me, play guitar for my launch. So I'll sing traditional songs like The Parting Glass and
Oh yeah,
Moves Through the Fair,
yeah,
That Is the Rose, you know, the lovely pieces. And then Fields of Athenry is a favorite of mine. And Stan Rogers, love, love,
yeah,
love Stan Rogers.
yeah.
So my love of the music is just an extension of the story, and it's
Exactly.
totally also sort of translated to Eastern Canada.
Oh, 100%. Have you ever been to the Celtic Colors Festival in Cape Breton?
No, but because I teach and it's in the fall.
Oh, that's so sad. Oh, you need to
Oh,
try to make it out sometime. You would love it.
I know. I've been to Cape Breton and I was excited. And I was just in Nova Scotia writing over the break at Christmas, and it was just lovely to be surrounded by some of that Celtic culture in places that I didn't expect to see it in Halifax, you know?
Oh yeah, oh it's 100% there.
Yeah.
My aunt lives on Cape Breton, and it's so nice there. I love Cape Breton. Um, yeah, that's so interesting. I love seeing the stories and the music traditions that have been carried over from Ireland,
Yeah.
and find pockets all over Canada. Really, it is very strong in the east, but it's definitely present in places in near Sudbury and things like that. It's
Oh, there's so
great.
many cultures.
Yeah.
That's another thing about the arts. Like so many great stories. And Latitude 46 is doing great work with bringing in a variety of voices too. The diversity of voices in the North is amazing, right? And so
Mhm.
we just need to be sure that there are venues
For
for
sure.
those voices to be heard in whatever medium
That's
they need to be heard through.
that's the thing, right? It's there's all of these amazing voices with stories that are waiting to be told, and we it'd be such a loss to miss out on those stories. Like it's so unfortunate when people aren't when we don't have the capabilities to bring them in and let them produce their work or make their art. It's such a loss.
Well, and it's also, I was just thinking when you were saying that, it's a really hard sell in the arts anyway, when you're in nonprofit arts.
Yeah.
And just through the pandemic, how that's affected, I'm thinking of theaters across Canada.
Hmm.
Um, but authors, so many authors I know of across Canada launched books in the pandemic, and how that affects sales or
Yeah.
reviews, or just like there's a loss there too. So
Hmm.
that's changed the arts. I wonder how the pandemic, I think in some ways it's brought us closer together as an artistic community, because I can go read virtually in Victoria and not fly there. So there are ways I see with TWUC, with the Writers Union, where I can see more issues where we're more accessible. You know,
Hmm.
that I hold an open mic meeting once a month with Ontario members, and we zoom in from all over the province, and it's such a big province and so many voices and um, different styles of writing. It's just fantastic to see that that's kind of blossomed because of us having to go into lockdown initially. So I think it's interesting how that's going to work in the arts for writers in particular, with hybrid events.
Hmm.
Now is pretty common, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's there. There has been for all the negativity, there has been a number of positive shifts that have come with COVID and the pandemic. Being able to have a conversation like this it probably wouldn't have been as it would have been possible, obviously, but it's become a lot more prevalent. It's become great for people that have accessibility issues to do digital work or to view work digitally.
Mhm.
That's been something that has been a big positive for all the negatives. It's been nice to see some of that stuff take off. Lot of connectivity.
I,
Um,
I'm yeah, and I just got I'm working with a mentor. I'm mentoring an emerging poet from Yellowknife.
oh
A young
wow,
Inuit poet, and I was thinking we would not, and we met when I was at a literary festival there in 2019
Mhm.
and connected. And it's just wonderful to think that we just meet on Zoom.
Yeah.
Whereas I would not have been able to have conversations. I mean, we could have via phone or FaceTime, I suppose, but Zoom's really opened up how we can meet with authors across the entire country, really in far geographic and different time, zones. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Um, I am noticing the time. I know we need to wrap up shortly. I want to.
That's too bad. This is exciting
No,
talking about the arts.
we're just getting into it. This is great. Well, maybe we can have a part two conversation at
That'd
some
be
point.
cool.
That'd be great. Um, I want to end with one question, and then I'm gonna ask you to share a little bit of your work if you're still feeling good with doing that. I'd love to hear
Sure.
it. Um,
Yeah.
but my last question is, what what is your it's we've been talking about it through this whole conversation, but what is your ideal future looking like right now for the arts in the North? Um,
Oh.
can you sum it up? It's a challenge in
What's
a
yours? If I
nice
ask
way.
you what's yours?
What's mine? I would say the biggest thing I'm passionate about is sustainability and a sustainable educational structure. That's mine. Something that we can basically where we have the ability to hold on to our emerging artists. That is the most important part of the future that I see is having a self-sustaining arts community rather than having to export or take in artists from the south.
I would totally agree with you.
That's yeah.
I think
Right.
that's why I'm so keen on mentoring emerging artists of various ages.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in my work as a teacher, as a classroom teacher, trying to encourage kids who, a lot of kids think I'm just going to do science and math, and then I tried to say to them, okay, you can do science and math. It's great you're doing science and math, but also a good doctor or a good scientist would also hopefully enjoy music, film, books,
Absolutely.
art, that they would be well rounded and that you might be a better scientist if engaged in the arts. I think it's crucial that we support the arts in the schools at elementary and secondary. I think that needs to be fed. It's like I'm not a good gardener. I will just say this to you right now, but the metaphor for me is if we want the arts to survive here, we need to plant those seeds in the ground
Yeah.
deeply and, encourage them to grow because I really worry that, gosh, if these pieces keep falling away, we need to replace them. So how do we keep people wanting to be here if the arts are weakening? And that means we have to fight for more funding, but we also have to fight for support inside our communities for the arts, right? And that can be hard in resource communities. And people will say, "Oh, you know what? We're not just that anymore." Well, that's the primary piece that's here, and then the secondary and tertiary pieces are because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all interwoven, and I think if we don't fight for the arts, we're going to lose them. And that's been the case forever. I don't think that's anything new. Anyone who's been in nonprofit arts, whether on a board or working for nonprofit arts, when I was in my 20s, I worked at the Art Gallery of Sudbury for a while as media and communications person. And then I just remember thinking then in the 90s, it's been a fight for the arts forever
Yeah.
through time, right? But I think it's harder in the north, and I think we need passionate people, and we have a number in different communities, and I think it's like weaving them together inside our communities, but then weaving those communities together,
Mm-hmm.
which is I really think you're doing that with this
Thank you.
podcast.
Yeah, that's absolutely what we're trying to do, or at least trying to
Yeah.
help in any way we can, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's so crucial, not just to have an event in a city that's okay, we're doing this. Okay, so then how do you do the outreach? Northern Lights Festival Boreal brings people in from out and through the Northeast as well. They do wonderful stuff. Up Here does wonderful stuff. There are some really beautiful festivals that are really making a conscious decision to to encourage local and then to weave in. But I would love to see more of this sort of weaving throughout the Northeast and the Northwest.
Yeah, absolutely. The
Yeah.
Northwest is such a um, elusive piece of the puzzle for me. I'm so not connected with the folks over there. I mean, like to an extent, but not as much as in the Northeast. It's I would love to see more collaboration there as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing all that. That's amazing. That I feel very strongly the same way. So I'd like to wrap up by asking what work you have going on right now, what you'd like to share with us.
I have
Yeah.
my new book. It's so beautiful, but it's my photo, so it's kind of pompous of me to say this, but that's my feet on the edge of Lake Kagawong.
Oh,
It's called,
that is beautiful.
it's backwards on here, but it's called Emptying the Ocean. So it's about how a person is full of emotion and how we are all oceans, right? I should read you a northern poem, really.
Sure, if you have one.
Yeah, I'm gonna find you one. I'll read you this one, which is called "You Shall Have Homes." It was shortlisted for an award by the League of Canadian Poets a few years ago, and it's based on a painting by N.C. Wyeth, not Andrew Wyeth.
Okay.
And that's the title of the poem, but it talks about the notion of home for me.
Very nice.
Pale bare feet rooted deeply in muck, but slim reeds reach to gray sky. Fingers that tease, gentle now, up sculpted curve of calves, curling around a waist, draping across breasts. She lifts her eyes, wants to soar above head frames, bright blue rivers of mine tailings, cast off broken rock, mottled slag, an edging of purple iris at her feet. She feels breath of wind, lover's lips. She lifts her eyes, wonders what home is now, longing for feathered ghosts to lift, gather her up in flight.
Thank you so much for sharing. That was beautiful.
Thanks for asking me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I feel like we're just getting into the conversation. I wish we could keep it going, but maybe
Anytime you want
we'll
to
have to
talk about the
continue
arts.
I know exactly. I could just go on for hours, but
Yeah,
yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been great.
cool. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
And
want to come read in the Sioux, so I'll totally be keen
yes,
on coming up to the Fringe in the summer,
absolutely.
hopefully.
Yeah, we will make something work. We'll get you over here for sure.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, and thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And we will be back with some more stories from Northern artists directly to you, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you so much again. Merci, miigwech, and have a great day.